I don't know if you know this, but one of the most beautiful things that could ever happen to somebody in their life has happened to me. I've become a dad. I got one. Only one person is celebrating it. I've become a dad. That's crazy. And it still catches me off guard when someone calls me dad, you know? Hey, dad. I'm like, who are you talking to? Like, it's not me, right? It feels like there's a title that I'm still living up to, a title that I'm growing into, dad. And I've got to tell you that it's the most beautiful feeling and fulfilling feeling in the world. There's nothing more precious for a man than to have a child. The pride of the father is second to none. A few days after Audrey was born, it was really early in the morning, or really late in the morning. And because I know some of you, like 3 a.m. is like your bedtime, right? For me, that's like, oh my God, I'm getting up so early. For some of you, that's like really late, you know? And it was like 3 in the morning, and I was holding Audrey in my arms. And she couldn't sleep. She woke up, and I was holding her. And when I held her, I caught myself uttering these words. I looked at her, deep into her eyes, and I said, it's the single greatest privilege of my life to be your dad. And it kind of caught me off guard, if I'm honest with you, because I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even a thought that I was like pondering. Have you ever tried to like mesmerize somebody with your words? So you think about your words like a lot before you speak them, before you say them. But in this instance, my heart, my soul, my mind, everything inside of me, without me thinking about it, it sprung out of my mouth and went straight into her heart. The greatest privilege of my life is to be your dad. And I felt this deep sense of responsibility and commitment that I've never felt before in my life. It's almost as if this is for the first time that I've actually had to be responsible for something. And I did this, and I reflected on where that came from. What you define that feeling that I was feeling as? And as I reflected, I found that word, that feeling is summarized with the word zeal. Because this responsibility that I have in commitment is like one I've never had before. Not that I haven't had a commitment and responsibility in marriage, and it's not that one is more significant than the other, but there is a level of responsibility and commitment to my daughter that is different than my wife. My daughter can't do anything. And I mean, well, let me scratch that. She can eat, she can sleep, she can cry, she can poop, and she can poop. She has taught me about resilience because it doesn't matter how many times I change her diaper, she just finds a new way to let me know she's got to go poop. It makes me kind of envious a little bit because I wish I had that kind of metabolism. The other day I ate 3 Chicago-style hot dogs, and I'm still ashamed about it. This girl, she will drink milk for 5 seconds and have 5 poops. I don't understand it. It's the miracles of God. So she can't do anything, right? It's the responsibility of my wife and myself to protect her, to keep her safe, to instruct her, to teach her about life. It's on us. And that feeling is such a strange feeling. It's something further than commitment. It's something further than responsibility. It's this word that I said, zeal. And I think that that's something that we need to define and have present in our lives. We've been on this journey titled The Elements for Victory for the past month or so. And we've looked at the attributes and the characteristics of life that you need to succeed in life. Characteristics in life that determine within you a successful life. A life where no matter what pain, no matter what trauma, no matter what difficulty you go through, you would be somebody who has the character of God and face it and succeed. Because I don't know if you realize this, there is a war of cosmic proportion. And maybe you say to yourself, well, that's a a bit dramatic. War is happening, but war is happening out there. Have you ever felt like that? War is not happening to me, Juan. What are you talking about war? What are you talking about cosmic proportion? But I don't know if you realize, but there is a tension inside of our souls. There is a tension, a war inside of our souls between good and evil. And so when we look at the world, it's no surprise that the state of the world is the way it is, because it's actually a reflection of each and every single one of us. The world that we live in is the world that we created, not the world that was given to us. And so there's a tension between what's good and what's wrong, a tension between taking characteristics of destruction within us or characteristics of overcoming. And I see the world and I see all the issues in the world, and we try to put policies. We try to change governments. We try to protest to change something that only God can change. I think what we need to do is remove the responsibility from man to govern us and give that responsibility to God so that we can govern ourselves. See, the reason why the world seems to be so evil, so maniacal, so dark, is when we ourselves give into this tension of destruction within ourselves. So there's a war within us. And I've met so many Christians that are so doom and gloom about everything. There are so many horrible things that have happened in the history of humanity, since the beginning of humanity. Genocides, horrible things that seem irredeemable. And every single time that the world seems to be in chaos, the first people to say the world is lost, the world is over, there is no hope, there is nothing left, seems to be people of faith. And I wonder, where does that come from? As people of faith, that we are the ones that seem to struggle with having hope where there is no hope. What is it within ourselves that every single time a crisis happens in the world, we think it's the end times? Let me tell you something, it's been the end times since Jesus left. So why do we give into these attributes and these things that do not represent us, do not represent God the way they should? I think we should be men and women that shouldn't assume that the world is over, but take on the characteristics of Jesus and be the hope and the love and the kindness and the optimism that the world desperately needs. So there is a war between good and evil within our soul and for our soul. And the question is, what are you going to do? What are the steps that you are going to make to live a life that does not just choose good, but there is no other option than to do what's right, just, and pursue it? I think it's a beautiful thing, the life of Jesus. For 30 years, we don't know much about him, except that he escaped the parenting of Joseph and Mary. We get an idea that he was working in the backgrounds, teaching much older people than him, asking questions that nobody else was asking, destroying their theology. I can only imagine a 12-year-old stepping into a room of 40, 60-year-olds who have studied the Torah more than anyone else, who have memorized it from their heart, and asking a question that completely shattered their reality. I don't know what it is about Audrey, but as of late, she doesn't talk, but she talks to me. She doesn't say words, but I hear her loud and clear. Earlier today, I was changing her, and I should have seen the signs. I should have paid attention to her face. I should have been listening, Cal. I should have been listening to her. As I was changing her diaper for the third time, within the matter of 3 minutes, she was making these faces. She was communicating to me something I did not understand until I found out. She peed all over my hand and all over her dress and all over everything. And as a matter of fact, I can't wait to go home to go clean it because I'm stressed about it right now. And so she communicates to me in such a beautiful way that it actually has taught me things about myself. I think when we look at the words of Jesus, when he tells us to do what's right, to uphold a life of sacrifice, a life of servanthood, we just hear it at words, but what he's really communicating to us It's transforming our souls, our bodies, our mind, and give them into who he is. I don't know if you're following me, but we'll get there. So I think that we need to be people who believe in what's just, in what's true, in what's good, and pursue it, not concerned with fighting against humanity. Your battle, your war is not against other people. No, but what you are meant to choose is to hold the hope that no one else seems to offer. And what we need to be is convicted, to be moved, to follow through the life that Jesus has given us. So, before I proceed, now that I've given you in the context, I want to give you a disclaimer. This conversation is for those who have come to realize that they have a responsibility. This is for the ones that have made a commitment to their life and given their life to Jesus and said, use me in any way. This is for the people who are desiring to have zeal over the things of God. This conversation is for those who are zealous for the life that God has given them and have devoted their life to following through. This conversation is for those who know that there is a war and it's calling them not to fight against each other, but to stand up for what's good. And there's a moment in the scriptures that immediately jumps out to me. In Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. And I want to give you some context to Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. What's happening here is that there's a king. The name of the king is King Darius. And he's written a decree that no man should worship God or any man beside himself. The governing body of the time had convinced the king to write this decree, and the reason that they illustrated and orchestrated this entire decree was out of spite for Daniel, because Daniel was a man of character and integrity, and it was opening doors for him that they could not open. So they thought, what is the best way to trap a man who stands for what he believes in, who has integrity, who is good, who believes in the things that God says? They say, well, king, why don't we create a decree where we make and push people of faith beside the ones who are of the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire to worship only you and no one else. And the reason they did this is because they knew that Daniel would not follow the decree. They didn't do it because they thought Daniel would follow it and he would give up his religious beliefs or his faith. The reason that they constructed this situation is so that he would rebel. And I love this. In Daniel chapter 6, verse 10, it says this. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. I love this. He says, 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. And then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying, asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Could you imagine that being the ultimatum in your life? Give up everything you believe or lose your life. And I love what Daniel did here because he had a lot of power and influence but didn't use it to overthrow the government. He had a lot of power and influence, seniority over all the magicians and astrologists and all the people of that land. And when the king said, you cannot worship anyone else except me, his answer was not to run a coup, spark a coup, or defame the king. His answer to you are not allowed to worship any other God was to worship God. His answer to you cannot live this life that pressured him was to open up his windows and to let the world know that I would rather believe in what I believe. I would rather serve God and have zeal for the things of God than to live a life separate, than to live a life of fame and of wealth. I would rather give up my life than to serve a God that is not my own. And this teaches us so much because you need to understand something. Here in America, we can say whatever we want and do whatever we want with very little repercussion, unless you do something insane. Some of y'all do insane things in the parking lot all the time, and I wonder, when are the cops going to show up and take you to prison, you hooligans? But you have to understand the brevity and the significance of this. Daniel doing this and opened an invitation for a death sentence. His desire, this moment, was the moment that would either define him as a man who lived for God or a man who would fold in pressure. So he opens up an invitation to death because he would rather be dead than to be alive without God. What this is defined as is zeal. Last year, a group and I went to LA, and we flew out to LA to the Mosaic Conference, and after the conference, a group of us were there, and Pastor Lawrence Fudge gave an incredible talk about having zeal for the Father's house. And it was incredible. I remember us being in the front row, some of the crew, and as he was preaching, as he was speaking to us, you could only imagine the whole crew was so excited. And it felt so touched. It was so beautiful. And I'm so thankful for Pastor Lawrence Fudge for preaching this message because it was for me. He was talking about how, as people of faith, we need to have zeal for the Father's house. And he opens up this passage of Scripture where Jesus is flipping tables because they've created the church into a marketplace. And I love, along the lines of what he said, we look at this moment and we say, see, Jesus got angry. I can freaking, break some walls and literally toss some chairs. Anger, righteous anger. But he talked about how zeal was not actually anger. It was actually something more than that, something deeper than that. And I'm so thankful that he shared that with us because it invigorated, it continued the drive, the burning desire in my soul to have zeal for the Father's house, to commit my life to house and give the best that I can give. Even if my best doesn't even come close to Jesus, it doesn't mean I can't try. And he gave me this drive, but oddly enough, it wasn't until recently with the birth of my daughter that I fully understood the layers of zeal. It wasn't until I saw the eyes of my innocent daughter who has done no wrong, who has not wronged anybody, who is innocent and pure and good, that I understood the brevity and the levels of what zeal really means. And when the scriptures tell us to have zeal for the things of God. See, I have this deep desire in my life to devote my life to the things of God. And I know me coming back and preaching to you about this is like, what a way to come back. But I would be doing you a disservice to not call you to be zealous for the life that God has given you. So, zeal. What is zeal? My dear friend Kathleen, he's Puerto Rican. He thinks it's pronounced Zell. Poor guy. Zeal is an energy that comes from something greater than you, something further, deeper. It's also an enthusiasm for a great cause. Other people describe zeal as a fervor. I played soccer with Cal over a year ago, and he plays soccer with fervor. He plays soccer like his life depends on it. Zeal can also be described as passion, an ardor. And in the scriptures, when we talk about zeal, when Jesus mentions zeal, when Apostle Paul talks to us about zeal, he's talking about a burning desire. Have you ever had a burning desire before in your life? Sometimes we have a burning desire for shoes. Burning desire for fame. A burning desire to be known, a burning desire to date somebody. We have a lot of young single people here. We talk about relationships more than we talk about Jesus sometimes, I think. How do I bag this girl? First of all, don't say bag this girl. You know? So what we need in our lives, what is so necessary, what will help us determine a life of success is to have a zeal for the life that God created us for, a zeal for the things that God has given us. You cannot protect your family. You cannot stand for the things of God if you do not have zeal over your family. We need to have zeal over our homes, zeal over our beliefs, zeal over our lives, zeal for the things of God, because this is your life. And I know we take it for granted sometimes, because life happens every day until it doesn't. But I want you to remember something. You are dying. Every single day that you live is one less that you have. What God has given you, life, is an opportunity to experience heaven on earth. This is your life. Don't spend it doing anything else than progressing towards the mission of your life. And I get in trouble for saying that, by the way. When some of my greatest critics say, why do you talk about life so much? You should talk only about Jesus. You talk about life too much. And it astonishes me. I find it to be odd that that's the biggest criticism that I have, or is given to me. But what you need to understand is that life is not separate from Jesus. See, I think that's why people of faith don't seem to be able to relate to other humans. Because they think that life is something over here and that Jesus is something over here. That my life is only occupied by Jesus when I go to church. That my life is only occupied when I'm with my Christian friends. The other ones that don't know how to relate to other people outside of church. But Jesus is over here. Your life and Jesus are two different things. So why do you talk so much about this? Because I think that we have a misconception. I talk about my life and the characteristics that you need in your life because Jesus has changed mine. The reason that we talk about life, the reason why we break down how to live a life connected to God is because I want to impress onto you the character of Jesus for your life. Your life and Jesus are not mutually exclusive. When you understand that Jesus changes your life, what happens is that he begins to inform your soul. The reason why I love us talking about life, the reason why I think it's so important for us to break down how to live life properly is because he has informed my soul. The views that I have on the world. Everything that I see is hopeful to me. And it annoys some Christians, some people of faith. Why do you have so much hope? And I'm like, why don't you? Life and Jesus in my life makes everything bright. I see God in every single thing. I see it in my daughter. I see God in the grass. I see God in the sky. I see God in this room. I see God everywhere I go. And I hope you respect me for what I'm about to say. I hope you respect me and you don't get up as soon as I say this from this church. But I love my life. That felt good. That felt good to say that. I love my life. Because I've devoted it to serving other people. I don't know where we got this from Christianity, that you cannot love what God has given you. That it is somehow unspiritual. And I think that's why we're not zealous over the life we've been given, because we don't really love it. And that is my purpose, my calling in life. I've devoted the rest of my life to serving you, to serving people. And that purpose of serving other people informs everything in my life. It informs my family. It informs how I treat my friends. It informs my job and how well I work. Some of the best workers in the world, not to be too pragmatic with you, should be Christians. Because we know what commitment and devotion and honesty and goodness is. If you love your life, the life that Jesus has given you, it should inform how you work and who you work with. Serving has informed my family, my friends, my job, my church, my city, my country. Even the people that I don't really like is informed completely in what serving does. My desire to devote my life that I love to these people, what it does is that it creates a zeal over my life that I'm willing to protect what I believe because God has given me the opportunity to live a life worth living for in these areas. See, I've watched so many people of great affluence and wealth be bankrupt in relationships. I've known so many millionaires going on to billionaires, people of faith, divorced. I've known people who know the Bible inside out, yet somehow can't relate to basic human kindness. I've known billionaires who have separated lines between Hispanics and white Americans because we are lesser than them, people of faith as well. I've known so many people who have had relationships that do not work, that do not last. People who have pursued great wealth and a great career and have not been able to sustain it because their heart is not in the people and in the relationships they have. It's not in the zeal for the things of God. It's for the things that they can earn and get. I need to tell you something. You cannot have the character of Jesus. You cannot have the character of Jesus and have these areas in your life not impacted for the better. I'll be honest with you. My preparation time for this Sunday was not what I want. I want 15 hours. I normally take 15, 20 hours to prepare. I know, you thought I'd just show up here and make it up as I go. 15 to 20 hours. That's a part-time job. On top of my full-time job, on top of being a father, on top of being a husband, on top of being your friend, on top of being your pastor, on top of being the contractor, and on top of starting my own business. Are you tired yet? I would fail if my life was devoted to gaining things, and my zeal would be for the things I can acquire, not the people that I have to serve. I don't know why people of faith hate when people say they love their life. I love my life, so I'll do everything I can to protect my family and to protect my church. So when you come to give your life to Jesus, something incredible happens. This is what happens when you come and give your life to Jesus. You realize that without God, life equals existence. But when God is the reason for which I live, when God is the source of my life, when God is the reason why I am the best husband in the world, when God is the reason why I'm the best father I can possibly be, the best friend, the best pastor, excellent in everything I do, when God is my motive and my reason, where He is everything, then my life equals life. See, we hate in some faith spaces to say, I love life. Cancel him. He loves his life. But when Jesus has stepped into your life, what has happened is that you have moved from existing to actually living. Because what informs your life is a cycle, is the relationships you have because of the relationship you have with God. The most alive people in the world are the people who give their life to life. Jesus said, I came to give you my life. I am the truth, the way, and the life. I heard Pastor Erwin McManus once say that for us, we think that we are living just because we breathe, just because we exist, just because we have jobs, that we are alive. And I'll never forget what Pastor Erwin said. He said, our life, in contrast to who Jesus is actually death. That Jesus is the source of all life, all that is beautiful, all that is good, all that is marvelous. So when Jesus says, I came to give you life, although you already have life, what Jesus is saying is your life without me is actually death. And I love that he said that. Because I've come to realize in my own life that without God, church is an institution. Ran by doctrine created by men. Denominations created to create lines in between followers of Jesus. People ask me, what's your denomination? I'm just a follower of Jesus. I love my life. Now, I know what you're thinking. Some of you, if you've been to church long enough, you're going, yeah, that's beautiful, actually. But you clearly didn't read the Bible. And I think sometimes we get lost in the words of Jesus when we don't have context. And I think that's why we've created so much division. Because we extrapolate some of the words from the scriptures and we don't realize and reflect on the context in which they are said. And it happens here. And I want you to understand the brevity, the power, the meaningfulness of what Jesus is about to say here in John chapter 12, verse 24, verse 25. This is Jesus speaking. Encouraging words. Very truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're not supposed to love your life. You're supposed to hate it. You're supposed to hate your life. Maybe you can enjoy, nope, that's too much. You can't enjoy your life. You can have joy in the suffering and in the pain. That will make you more spiritual. You can have joy in your life, but you cannot have a joyful life. What are you doing? We are Christians. You can't love your life. And I think we look at what Jesus says here, and we don't see the layers that have led up to this moment of him saying, if anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it. These words seem to cut so deep. Could you imagine being depressed and hearing Jesus say that? The wind in your sails just fall apart. Could you imagine being anxious and depressed and sad and wanting to end your life? And the words of Jesus are, if you love your life, you will lose it. What a way to discourage me, Jesus. I just said all that and you completely just killed everything I said. However, that's not the intention of his words. There's another book in the Bible where they go over the same and very similar situations. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 25. I want you to go there with me, please, so that you don't think I'm a heretic. Let's go. Matthew chapter 16, verse 25. Actually gives us some further insight. This is Jesus speaking. For whoever wants to save, yeah, that's right. He's going to be a preacher one day. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? See, what Jesus is communicating to us is that if giving your life to God's will is too much, then your life is too little. That if serving others is too much, then you won't ever expand your heart and grow in your capacity of loving people. If living under the pressure of being criticized is too much for you, then you will never find a new way. I know so many artistic, creative people burdened by criticism that nobody has ensued on them yet. They think, we can't do this in church. This is brand new. We have to do it like the old days. No, we're Christian. We don't progress in our creativity. We're humble. And we don't try new lighting. We don't try new artistic expressions. Let me say this one more time because I think you got lost in it. If God's will is too much for your life, then your life is too little. So what Jesus is saying is don't withhold your life. What Jesus is actually saying to us is give it away. Jesus is not saying, I want you to hate your life. Because if he's saying hate your life, then why the heck do we need zeal for it? Why, if we hate life, do we need to have zeal to pursue other people and share the word of God with other people? What Jesus is actually saying, if you try to save your life for the next life, if you try to save yourself, your money, your servanthood, your kindness, if you are not willing to go to the ends of the earth for the people you love, you will lose it and you will be bankrupt in relationships. Even if it costs you your life. What Jesus is saying is stand for what's good and just and right. And you will gain something more than existence. When you do these things, what you gain is life. And when you gain something that is more than existence, when you gain true life, when you understand that you were once dead, but now you are alive, you would go to the ends of the earth with zeal, with a great energy, with a great enthusiasm, with a great fervor, a great passion, a great ardor, a burning desire to serve your world. See, you are not the savior of the world, but you are responsible for your world, for your family, for your wife, for your husband, for your job, for your city, for the people sitting next to you. You changing the world is this. You will not go to the ends of the earth if you do not have zeal for the life that God is calling us to. The intention that you were created for, to be connected to God, to serve God and serve each other. Have zeal for God. Because when you do, your world will change. I've had the incredible privilege to learn from some of the most successful people in our city. And I've asked them a lot of questions about wealth and how to create wealth. But oddly enough, what they ask me, and all they want to know about, is my personal life. One, I can't tell them how to gain wealth, so that makes sense. But two, they seem to be so inspired by my life. And I don't tell you this so that you're inspired by my life. I just tell them I'm living. But why are you so kind? But why do you spend money you don't have for me? By the way, that's the story of my life. Aren't you tired? Go home. You have no idea the sacrifice I have to make every morning to get here. And I would never do it if I did not believe that your life mattered. Somebody said to me, I want to be worthy to live this life. And I go, stop with that Christian mumbo jumbo. Don't worry about being worthy. Know that you were worth dying for. Have zeal for your life, for the life that God has given you. So going back to Daniel, chapter 6, verse 25. I want to take you to see how somebody who has zeal for the things of God and the things that God has done in his life changes the world. In Daniel chapter 6, verse 25, it says, well, I should give you some context. Daniel does that. He gets in trouble. By the way, being Christian does not mean you no longer, like an occasion get tossed in a pit full of lions. That doesn't mean that. It means that you are not afraid while jumping in the pit because you know you're standing for something greater than you. So he gets tossed in there, and the lions don't kill him. They don't eat him. I don't know if you've ever seen a lion before, but they're taller than Tony, and Tony is pretty tall. And he doesn't die. And then it reads this. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and all the people of every language in all the earth. By the way, back then they didn't understand that there was North America and South America and Antarctica. So when it says all the earth, it's what they knew how big the world was, okay? So it was like just their empire. That was the world, Like Alexander the Great conquered the world. No, he conquered the Middle East and some of Russia. But he says, and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I have issued a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and revere the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. When you have zeal for the things of God, it doesn't just change your life, but it makes a relationship with God possible for others. When you stand for what's good and just and right, despite the pressure that may come to your life, you impact and change the world. You become the hope that you need. I see what's going on all over the Middle East. I see what's going on all over Africa. Still what's happening in Ukraine. In China, Christians can't meet. All over the world, there are horrible things that are happening, but there are people on the ground who have zeal for individuals, willing not to kill to save, but to give their life so that others would have it too. When you have zeal for the things of God, life is precious. The element for victory that you need in your life is zeal for the things of God. So, I know you came to listen and hear about Jesus. What would prompt the God of the universe to step into the human story? I mean, when my wife was giving birth to Audrey, we had Frank Sinatra on, jazz. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was great. It really was, trust me. She was extremely kind and sweet. She was kind and sweet, bro. She was pushing out a child. And in that moment, I just thought about Jesus stepping into her story as a baby. As a baby. Some of you don't have babies. You need to understand that babies need protection. They need love, they need nourishment, they need guidance. A baby. The God of the universe stepped into our story as the most innocent and fragile thing imaginable. And he grew alongside our story. He was a teenager at a point, a young man, and then a grown man. And he came and he lived among us so that he could give us life. What would prompt God to do that for you? Why would God think you're so special? Why did he give his life for you and not the angels, not the universe? Why you? If God thought that you were worth dying for, if God thought that there must be another way to redeem you, your creation, you who everything that you are, why wouldn't you protect what he's given you? Why wouldn't you love each other? Why wouldn't you think that the most beautiful thing that you can accomplish in your life is to live a life with God? See, Jesus stepped into our story to rewrite it, to show us that life can be lived alongside him. Would you stand with me this morning? I think we have to make a commitment at some point in our lives as people of faith to say, I don't just say what I believe, I live what I believe. People of faith who make the hard decision to be honest. It's so easy to lie. It's so hard to be honest until you're just honest, right? So many times we say, Jesus, I give you my life. I've given you my life, but live like we're still dead. And treat each other like we don't matter. Like the world's over anyway, who cares? And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. It really does. Because we are supposed to be the ones waving the flag of there is hope again. That there is a better future, a brighter future. That there is a life worth living, and that's the life with Jesus. I want us as house, before we continue this series, before we continue in this year, to make a commitment in our personal lives to say, I'm going to have zeal for the life that God has given me. I'm not just going to read the Bible when Pastor Juan reads the Bible or makes me read the Bible. I'm going to open up the scriptures because that's what informs my life. I'm not going to just love people to gain something. I'm going to serve people because God served me. I'm going to be zealous over my family, which means when work is up until midnight, I'm going to stop working at 7 and be present with my family and work at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning because my family matters more than my job. I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm not just going to ask somebody to go eat with us. I'm going to pay for their meal. I'm not just going to see the crises that are happening all over the world and talk about what's happening, but do something. See, zeal prompts us, informs us, motivates us, pushes us to do what we say we believe. This morning, I want to pray over your life. And I want to encourage you to have zeal in your life. Father, I thank you so much for everyone in this room right now in this moment. A harsh message, straight to the point. That you are asking us, God, to not just live a life saying that we belong to you, but live like we actually do. I pray that you prompt our spirit, prompt our soul. Move us, God, towards the sound of your voice. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for coming up.